Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast on YouTube. My name is Carey Nieuwhof, and my goal is to help you lead like never before. So what I do every week is I sit down with world-class leaders and church leaders, business leaders, and I talk to them about what made them who they are and try to have the conversation with them that you would have if you got to sit down for lunch with them or have dinner with them or really got to spend some time with them. So we go into the backstory and we explore what made them who they are and some of the principles they've learned along the way. So if you enjoy this episode, I would love for you to like it, to subscribe, and also to share it with your friends. And in the meantime, here's today's episode. David, welcome to the podcast.
Carey, thank you big time for having me on, man. Really looking forward to this one. And I just got to tell you, I've been an avid listener of your podcast. I mean, you bring on good friends of mine like John Gordon. So if I can just live up to half that, we'll be doing something good.
Listen, it's an honor to have you on. And so here's a fun place to start. You turned down an NBA coaching job to write a book? Is that true? Did I read that right?
Completely true. Sounds crazy, right? So yeah, my whole life goal had been to coach in the NBA after I figured out I couldn't play in the NBA. So a couple of years ago, the Phoenix Suns were flying me down to ask me questions on how to build the development program. And they were going to let me like literally just take the reins and put in all my optimization, bring in my sleep coaches, bring like the stuff that I was a nut for, total optimization. And I was about to take the deal. They offered me a deal, a 3-year deal. And I was talking to John Gordon, who's been a mentor to me and a really close friend of mine. And everybody else around me was saying, oh, it's great. Yeah, it's great. But he asked me the question, like, is that really what you want to do long-term? Do you really only want to have an impact on basketball players? Sure, that's great. But I think you're made for so much more. So yeah, I kind of sat on it for a little while. I was like, he's probably right. If I continue to do this, like I will be able to have an impact on basketball players. But I know these skill sets, these tools, these mindset development things that I've been working on with these players can just translate and help so many more people. So I turned it down to write the book. And it's the thing of like, you know what, the enemy to great is not bad. The enemy to great is good. And this was a good opportunity, but it wasn't okay, this is exactly what I'm super passionate about doing. And encouraging, speaking, writing, teaching, sharing the things that I've been able to learn is what I'm really passionate about.
Which is really interesting because wasn't your goal to be in the NBA, but you realize there's not a lot of openings for 6'2" skinny guys or something like that? Like what?
Yeah, man. So I grew up in a small town of Pella, Iowa, cornfields of Iowa. And now I'm not that athletic and 6'2", and my parents probably should have said, you know what, play baseball or golf, something like that. But I was so into playing in the NBA. It was like no other thing interest me at all playing in the NBA. I had no backup plan. I grinded my way to play college basketball, and I'm playing overseas. Fast forward to playing overseas, and it sounds cool to say, oh, professionally overseas. But to be honest, it was more like the Will Ferrell semi-pro joke of a league. So I'm playing in northern Spain where they speak no Spanish. They're more interested in where the party is going to be at after the game. And I'm here just putting in these 2-a-days. I'm still convinced I'm playing in the NBA when I'm the furthest thing from it. And not only that, I get cut from that team. So all my hopes, goals, dreams are just taken away and turned upside down and my head rubbed in the dirt. So I came home and I'm living on my parents' recliner chair, licking my wounds, feeling bad for myself. They're in Kansas City at the time. And my mom would always say these motivational and inspirational quotes. And usually it's like, whatever, mom, in one ear, out the other ear, whatever. She said this one, I remember vividly when she was doing dishes. I was kicked back on the recliner in the living room. She said, David, when one door closes, 4 open in an entire beachfront patio overlooking the ocean. And it hit me. It's like, I never heard that. I thought it was just one door. I thought it was an even trade, you know?
Yeah. I've never heard that either.
Yeah. I don't know if she made it up or if she heard it anywhere. Who knows? But what she was saying is everything that I'd poured into playing in the NBA was actually for something greater, for a bigger purpose, to teach, to coach, to help players who had the God-given abilities, the athleticism, the height to be able to play in the NBA. So then that was my pivot. I poured everything into coaching in the NBA. And we can go into those stories of how we got there and everything. But back to your point of turning down the Suns job, like now I poured everything into coaching in the NBA, but I realized that wasn't the door. Like that door closing to the NBA was actually 4 more opening. And I'm speaking to you right now from Los Angeles, like literally overlooking the water, overlooking the ocean, 4 doors opening an entire beachfront patio overlooking the ocean. So what most people think can be a door shut is actually an opportunity for 4 more to open and just greater things to come through what you have learned through this journey, through the process.
And you're how old at this point, David?
Right now, I'm 34.
34. Okay. So you're just sort of starting out. So that was about a decade ago. How long ago were you still pursuing your NBA dreams?
Yeah, till I was 24 is when I got cut. So I got cut. And then when I made that realization, like, okay, I'm going to coach in the NBA, I didn't have any connections there. And I knew I had to do something to stand out. And the only thing I could do really when I played was shoot anyways. I couldn't play any defense. I could never even dunk. I couldn't even hardly touch the rim. I wasn't athletic. So it's like, okay, I'm going to use my niche, my elite skill, and become the best teacher of that. So I studied up on who the best shooting coach was in the NBA. His name is Chip England. And I would write him letters, emails, calls. I even traveled out to Las Vegas to NBA Summer League just for the opportunity to meet him. And we were walking down Thomas and Mack Corridor Arena, and I saw him. He saw me. He knew what I looked like. And we got to talking, and he basically took me under his wing for that time being, gave me a ton of advice because he saw all the effort I was pouring into this and how bad I wanted it. And I went on to create this basketball with a line down the center of it and had them shipped from China to the Oakland seaport, and got in my car from Kansas City, drove 29 hours to Oakland, and literally spent the next 5-6 years living out of my car, airports, random people's couches, just running these basketball camps for anybody that would bring me in, whether it's a 7th grade girls team or YMCA. But like it sounds like, oh, you lived in your car, like that's a grind. It wasn't though. I loved it because that's what I was just dead set passionate about.
Okay, so one of the things already, and we don't have the whole story, but you're pretty good at connecting with people. So before we get there, I got to ask you, Nurse, one of your uncles is an NBA coach, right? Nick Nurse, Toronto Raptors. Is it true that he cut you at one point or fired you?
Super true. So to his credit, he drafted me first. He was kind enough to draft me in the NBA D-League. Yes, but then he cut me. So I thought I was better than I was as a player, hence the story of playing overseas and thinking I was going to play in the NBA still. So he gave me the opportunity to, but also the realization that this probably wasn't my path. But he's been a mentor and amazing to me. And some of the just the stories of his journey, like just real quick, like his journey is, it took him 27 years to become an overnight success. He'd been coaching at these small colleges. He was coaching over in England. I went over there with him. I saw him taping players' ankles, popping popcorn at halftime, but he treated every moment, every coaching opportunity like he was an NBA championship head coach. And 27 years later, his first year as a head coach for the Toronto Raptors a few years ago, everybody thinks, oh, lightning struck in a bottle. He got lucky, first year head coach. But no, he'd been doing that for 27 years, and people just didn't see that until it happened. So he's an amazing guy. He's been just a great leader to me in my life.
Well, that was an electrifying year for those of us who know and love Toronto like I do.
Yes,
what was it like when he had to cut you? How did he handle it? And how did you keep your relationship alive with him rather than, oh, that's the uncle I never talk about?
Yeah. I mean, it hurt. It stung because I thought, one, I was good enough. And two, like, he's my uncle. He's got to keep me on the team. So it hurt at first. But then my realization there was loving somebody is not about giving them exactly what they want. Loving someone is about being extremely honest with them. That's what, I mean, I don't want, like, for me now too, like, I don't want any yes men in my life. Like, I want people that are going to challenge me. Yes, support, but also challenge. So someone just to give me something, like if Nick was just to keep me on the team, it would have been doing me a disservice. I didn't realize it at the time, but afterwards I was like, you know what? That was actually a blessing that he did that, taught me that lesson.
How did you get over that? Did you go through a period where you didn't want to talk to him, or did you just kind of suck it up, or what happened?
Yeah, no, I definitely went through a period where I didn't want to talk to him. And he will tell you I went through a period where I didn't want to talk to him. But when I realized, like, I can either just sit in my own sorrow and just feel bad for myself, or I can use this as a learning experience and something that I can grow from. And that's happened to me many, many times in my life, as I'm sure it probably has everybody listening, where there's a failure or a setback that happens to them. And it's really our perspective and how we see it. We get the choice every day to look at our decisions as either it's like a coin flipping in that Batman movie, the guy Two-Face. You flip the coin. If something bad happens, me getting cut from the team, okay, I can look at that as like, okay, what can I learn from that? How can I grow from this? This happened to me for a reason and a purpose. So I'm getting better from the negative. And if something good happens, if I get a little win, boom, I'm going to build that on momentum, building momentum, these little wins stacking on top of each other. So literally every situation that we have, we can use it for our good.
You've had a really interesting life so far. So can you give us just the thumbnail biography? So wannabe NBA star, playing in the semi-pro leagues, cut from the team, living in your car, coaching. Now you're an author. Is that it? Tell us, did I get it right? Is that the trajectory? Fill in some blanks.
Yeah, that's really close. Like make me sound cooler than I am, but I mean, there was a lot of uncertainty in there, and there was a lot of people asking me. I'm from the Midwest, so everybody asks, when are you getting a real job? When are you getting a 9-to-5? Like, there's a lot of people saying that I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing, and it's obviously all led to this point, to this spot I'm at right now. But yeah, the biggest thing that you left out there is my amazing wife. Like, she's the coolest part of that whole thing. NBA coaching, traveling. I've been to, last count was 53 countries and had some amazing food. Like, I love traveling for the food alone. But the best part is my wife, and she's an actress, a producer. She's got a couple shows that are getting produced right now in the works, and she's just literally my rock for everything.
So tell us about your wife.
Yeah. So she is she's an actress. She's been in the show, some ABC shows, some big network shows. But the coolest thing, man, is just we just really enjoy being around each other. Like, we just like there's, when those couples will say, hey, I need my own time, I need my space. Like, not us. We want to be around each other 24/7. That's why we've loved the pandemic. Like, I didn't have to travel as much. We get to spend this time together, whether she's doing her work or I'm doing my work. We're still around each other, and just that enjoyment. I think that gets overlooked. Like, we try to do what others couples don't do. Like, everybody was telling us, oh yeah, just wait till the honeymoon stage ends. No, we go on a honeymoon every 6 months, and we call it a honeymoon. We got one coming up in June. A honeymoon. Why does there only have to be one? Like, why can you not love your partner, your spouse more and more every single day? And we want to be those type of examples to other couples.
That's cool. Your wife's name is?
Taylor, great. So for everybody who wants to follow her on Instagram, she has quite a few followers on Instagram. Taylor. Yeah, Taylor Kalupa is her stage name. She took my name, but she still uses the stage
Taylor
name.
Taylor Kalupa. Yeah. And what show is she on right now?
So she was on The Fix. It was a O.J. Simpson kind of setup right there. But over the pandemic, she has been producing with her friend 2 shows, and they've got offers from major networks and everything. So that's probably all I can say on that. Or
understood.
I might be in the doghouse
I might be in big trouble, but that's fun.
There's good
so
stuff. So
she's working on a couple of projects. Yeah. And you said, it was funny. We were talking before we got recording. You said as soon as you saw her, you're like, she's the one. I had the same experience. So I got to tell you, you've been married 2 years. I'm 31. I'm like, yep, she's still the one, which is great. But you just had that instant connection.
But isn't it cool though? Like, you see yourself changing throughout the years, and you guys changed together. Like, I know you had Tim Keller on. Doesn't he talk about, my wife's been married to 6 different people and they're all me at different stages of life?
Yeah, that's so true.
I love that. So yeah, I mean, we grow, we change together, but we do it all together, and it can get even better every single day.
What's the most challenging thing so far in your life?
Man, you know what? The most challenging thing is probably having all those goals that I had, my dreams taken away from me. So at that time, those were the most challenging things, where I had to completely make a life pivot. Like the one in the NBA, I'll give you that story. That one hurt a lot. I was with the Brooklyn Nets, and I just came on with the Brooklyn Nets mid-season and turned them around helped them go from 28th to 2nd in 3-point shooting percentage. And I was getting all this buzz, all this hype. I was 27 at this time, this young up and coming coach. And this was it for me. NBA coaching. Like, I was going to solidify myself for years and years to be an NBA coach. Yeah, I was their shooting coach. Yeah. So at the end of the year, the GM's telling me 3-year deal, like we're going to make it happen. We love having you here. I was getting this press. So I thought I was locked in, and the head coach had gotten released. So as NBA and sports go, when you bring in a new head coach, they bring in their whole new staff. So I went from thinking this was my end all be all, I was going to do this at the highest level, to one day the door was shut, slammed in my face, and no longer was I an NBA coach. And I was left scrambling. It was late in the offseason. I couldn't find, every other team had all their rosters filled and everything. So it was really crushing to see my goals and dreams get taken away. But every time in life it happens, and it just keeps getting better. Like it's what I'm able to do now is speak and write books. And I just signed a 3-book deal. So I got a few more coming out here soon. I'm really passionate about helping people harness their inner power that they don't know they have. We are our biggest defenders. We block away. Like, we all have God-given gifts and abilities inside of us. But the biggest tragedy is that we just keep it pushed away. We keep it locked in. We have the 50,000 self-talk thoughts a day, and 80% of those are negative thoughts that we're telling ourselves. So that's what I love doing. See people have breakthroughs in their life where they realize, man, I have this gift inside of me and I can use it. And it's selfish if I don't use it, if I don't go for it, if I don't take that chance and don't take that risk. So the most challenging thing for me ended up being my biggest blessing. And I think, whether that sounds like, oh, I'm not struggling with anything, I'm daily struggling with things. Like, I'm daily struggling with, I feel overwhelmed. I feel like, man, why can't I get this book deal? Like, it's good problems to have, but it's still, no matter what problems we have, we still have problems.
What was the path from NBA coach, living in your car, that season of your life, to author? It's not a intuitive path.
Yeah. And it's funny you ask that question, because it's one of the main mindset points that I have in the book Pivot and Go, and that I use, and it's voting for yourself. I made the decision that I was going to be an author. I had these stories, these crazy stories. I had these points. I was able to be around 150 NBA players and learn a lot from those guys. And so I made the decision, I'm going to vote for myself every day that I'm David Nurse, the author. Now, my identity did not say it was. My identity, anybody would ask you, was David Nurse, basketball coach or basketball. But that's not the bigger picture that I saw. And so I literally, every morning I woke up, I wrote down on a piece of paper in my journal, I vote to be an author. I vote to be an author. So I was daily taking these votes on myself to be an author. And I would start telling people. I would start telling people around me, hey, I'm writing this book. I'm writing this book. At first, it was like, that gets some weird looks. But a few months go by and these people start asking me, hey, how's the book coming? How's the book coming? So it just it went from this can't be you to you speak it into existence. You vote for yourself daily and it can be you. Now it's almost the other way. Still, I'm associated with basketball, but more people will know me for my book than they will basketball and being an author and a speaker, which is crazy to think 4 or 5 years ago that it would be like that. So that was my journey from basketball. And I love basketball. I still work with NBA players on their mindset and help them take, that's the biggest thing, man, in sports and in business and everything is how do we get the most out of our total optimization? The most of it comes through the mindset that we have. So yeah, many more books to come.
Yeah. So you have worked with over 150 NBA athletes. What are some common characteristics you see in NBA athletes? The good ones.
Yes. I figured that's what you're asking first. So the separator that I can tell you when I'm with an NBA player, and I would do pre-draft for a lot of these guys coming from college to the NBA. And this, I can tell you within the first 5 minutes, if this guy was going to have a chance to be great, it's do I have to drag them to the gym? Or do they drag me to the gym? Meaning, do they really have that drive? Because if I have to tell a guy, hey, we got to get up for workouts. Hey, you got to get it going. Come on, slack, let's go. He doesn't have that just intrinsic killer mentality, the Mamba mentality, and that he just wants it. But if a player is literally telling me like Domantas Sabonis, one of the best players in the NBA I've worked with, Shea Alexander was a pre-draft guy I worked with. They would just drag me to the gym nonstop in the mornings and the evenings. I had to tell them sometimes I can't even move. I'm just worn out. but they wanted it that bad because they were in love with the process of it. They were in love with the unseen hours. It wasn't just about when the lights were on or the lifestyle that they could live. Like, they genuinely loved working out. They loved getting better, the improvement process. And the majority of players, even at that level, you think they all might be like that. The majority are not. So that's the difference, the separator, the biggest separator. And I'll tell NBA GMs when they ask about a player coming out of college, like, I've worked with the player of the year for Iowa. I've worked with him, Luka Garza, coming out this year. And the NBA is saying, like, his feet aren't quick enough. I don't know if he'll be able to play in the high-speed NBA. I'm like, yes, he will, because he will drag me to the gym. And so it's just, that's the biggest separator that I've seen with the greats versus the guys who don't make it.
Is that coachable, in your view? Can you turn a semi-motivated person into a drag you to the gym person?
Phenomenal question, Barry. And I think to an extent it is, but I think at the core, it's not. It has to be in them. And you could try everything. Like one of our mutual friends, Ian Morgan Cron, like I give people the Enneagram, figure out like what makes them tick, what motivates them, what can really get the but all of that is almost like a Band-Aid for a little while, or just a little booster for a little while. But the long standing, if they're going to have that consistency, what I call relentless consistency, it's something that they have to find within themselves. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be born with it, but there has to be something that triggers. It's just like falling in love with Jesus and following Jesus. Like, it just triggers and you're like, wow, how did I do it before? How was I ever like that before? Sometimes NBA players will get that. Sometimes they won't. And I've been around a lot of talented players that I tried to get them to understand it. They just couldn't.
So when they're not, because you're right, they are all playing in the NBA and you would assume everybody is like that, and they're not. What are the caps on their career? Because I agree. I see it as almost a selection criteria. We call it self-starters, right? Like, if somebody's sitting around going, give me something else to do, it's like, oh, you're probably not going to work out well on this team. If they can't see the work, it's like, I want the people who are like, wow, there's so much to do here. And I see this and I see this and I see this. Yeah. Like that is something we try to select for, rather than people who are like, well, I got the list done. It's interesting. So I guess my question is, with the others who are on the team, what are they missing if they don't have that kind of drive?
If they don't have that kind of drive, what separates them from being an elite player?
Yeah. In other words, how many people, again, you know this if you listen to my interview with Rob Palinka from the Lakers, but I don't know basketball.
I got a story with Rob I can tell you too.
Okay, I want to hear your Rob story. Definitely. Okay. He's a super dude. But I had to do research. Awesome. How many people are on an NBA roster? Like, how many people do teams carry?
Normally 15 they carry.
Okay, 15. So some guys number 14 and 15 on that team.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But he made the cut. So what is he missing because he doesn't have that drive?
Yeah. So it can be opportunity. It can be, there's so many things that go into that when they're at that level, when they're at 14 compared to 5 or 6.
They're
like
not
the
bad.
Talent.
Like, they're good.
No. The talent level's amazing. Hey, guys if you're in the NBA and you're 15th on the bench, that means you were one of the best players in college basketball altogether. But so, and a lot of them, because they'll go as being the man in college, they won't understand like how to be the supporter, how to be the guy who waves the towel, cheers them on. And I actually have a great story about this. He was a teammate of mine in Greece. Actually, it was the place I played before Spain, before getting cut there. His name was Aaron Baines, and he got picked up by the Spurs the year after, and he was the last man on the roster for the Spurs. And he was feeling bad for himself. And he was like, man, because he was the stud. Like, he was a stud over in Europe and in college. And I was talking to him one time over lunch when he just got picked up with the Spurs. And I was telling him, like, why don't you just decide to become the best towel waver you can possibly be? Like, why don't you just dominate towel waving? And meaning, why don't you be the best cheerleader you can be? Bring passion to it, bring encouragement to the players. And he literally embraced that and would just wave his towel like crazy. If you go back and watch the film for the Spurs, he'd be up waving his towel, and it's infectious. Sure, the Spurs had a great culture, but he was just going and going. And he got his opportunity the year after. They won an NBA championship, still wasn't playing a whole lot. but just kept waving his towel and the consistency of it. And then eventually he got his opportunity and he was so ready for it. He took advantage of it and got a deal the next year, a 3-year deal with the Pistons. Then he got a deal with the Celtics, then with the Suns, then with my uncle's Raptors. And he's probably made about $100 million in the NBA because he embraced that, okay, I'm the 14th, 15th man on the roster. I'm going to just be the best 14th, 15th man on the roster I can possibly be and wave my towel.
And those are the people who always get promoted. In any organization I've been a part of, those are the people, it's like you're at the bottom of the org chart. But if they're waving that towel or sweeping that broom or like, hey, can I get you another coffee? Whatever the support role might be, because we've heard it on this show. So many people start at the bottom and they work their way up. That is really good counsel. And you hit on another really good point too, David, which is you were the best player in your high school, the best player in your college, and all of a sudden you barely made the NBA. That can be very ego deflating for people too, right? But you got to look at the positive. Okay, what's your Rob story, Rob Palinka?
Oh, real quick. Okay, so this must have been like 4 years ago when I was doing pre-draft for my friend Casey Wasserman, who runs a big sports agency, and they have a day that is the pro day. So this is like the beauty pageant for these guys going to the NBA. So you make them look really good. All the coaches come in, all the GMs come in, and you just basically set them up in like where they can make their best shots from, so they look really good. And our guys shot it phenomenally, like shot so good from threes. And afterwards, Rob and Magic Johnson, who was working with him at the time, came up and talked to me like, we love what you did with these guys. We love what you did. Like some of the guys had only been there for like 3 or 4 days, so I didn't really have the impact to have on them. I was like, okay, yeah. And so we started talking about being a shooting coach for them and had some meetings, had some phone calls, and about 2 months just kind of back and forth, figuring out what it would look like for next year to be the shooting coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. So I was like, I was super excited about this. And then that's when LeBron came from Cleveland to the Lakers, and I didn't hear from anybody again. So it's like, okay, basically it was LeBron, who do you want? Bring on anybody that you want for anything. And it's kind of how it goes with LeBron. You got to, just have the understanding that if he decides he wants to bring his boys on, he brings his boys on. So I got it. No hard feelings on it, but hey. No.
You know what I've learned in leadership, David? It's sometimes doors close, but they always have. It's what your mom said. It was your mom.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 4 more doors open, and there you got the lake view. Like that's pretty cool. And I've been disappointed by opportunities before too. And obviously LeBron has his own gravitational pull as well. I'm sure from the little I know about basketball. But yeah, I'm sure that's going to come around at some point in a different way. Okay, you also work with a lot of Fortune 500 CEOs. So you're doing that. How did you get into that? And what are the similarities and differences between Fortune 500 CEOs and NBA players?
Yeah, so there's a lot of similarities. Basically, it's the term the corporate athlete. The CEOs want to be NBA players. They want to know what the highest level minds are doing, and athletes when all the pressure's on them. There's millions of dollars on the line every night. There's millions of eyes on them. How do they perform under pressure when the storm's going? And all NBA players, they want to be Fortune 500 CEOs. They think they're all a business. They think they're all a brand. So there's a lot of similarities in there. And I saw those similarities. I was actually asked to come speak at a company at Nestle, and I set up a talk basically like I did with, okay, what are these top athletes doing? How can it correlate to CEOs? And it was just so in step with what they were looking for when I was asking them about it. And I was calling it the breakthrough blueprint. And they're like, that's actually what our motto this year is. It's like, perfect. So it's kind of just like had this perfect marriage at the right time of understanding that these guys at this elite level, girls at this elite level want to be taught, want to figure out the small details that can separate them, that can take them not from just good to great. Because a lot of people can do that. But how do you go from great to outstanding? How are you when you're at the top of your game, when you're this top NBA player, how do you take it to another level? How are you when you're this great CEO and you're running an amazing company? How do you separate yourself and take another step, be 2 steps ahead of the competition? So
how do you do that?
That's great. So the main struggle that I see with NBA players and corporate leaders is focus. How do you stay focused? Because the more you can focus, the more you're going to be just, laser sharp in. But also to that point, focus, if you focus too much, you're only locked in on one thing and you can't see everything else around you happening. And as high level leaders, we have a lot of goals. We have a lot of things that we have to be able to interconnect and weave through and continue to have just at this high level. So then it comes to the question of, okay, well, what if I get into flow? What if I'm just flowing? And then that's great. Flow is when you're using your natural abilities and you're just feeling it and you're kind of, just like have this great rhythm and it's a keep calm, carry on type thing. But there's always distractions too. And when you're flowing too much, the distractions are going to squash you. So if you're focusing too much, you can't see the distractions. If you're flowing too much, they're squashing you. So where do you get the mixture of this? And this is what I've been developing this for years on how to come up with it. I couldn't think of a term. There was no real term for it. So I just put them together and I call it focus. Like, how do you mix this focus, high level focus with high level flow and this perfect, unlikely marriage of focus? And I have a system, I call it the triple threat of how you set it up. So you build the structure. Everything is system plus process equals results. So building the structure of the system and understanding, like, what do you do at the highest level? Like, what is your Michael Jordan? And Michael Jordan was the most clutch player in the NBA. Everybody knew he was going to shoot that game-winning shot all the time. And I'm friends with his point guard, BJ Armstrong. He's an agent now. And he told me the story where Michael missed a game winner and came back to the locker room, game winner against the Knicks, came back to the locker room, and he was smiling. He was sitting there smiling, and everybody else was down and dejected. And BJ's like, what's going on here? And he's like, I'm going to take that shot every single time. I just love getting that shot. That's who I am. That is what I do. And I'm going to do it every single time. Like, he was excited just because he got that shot. Like, that, he knew that was his elite skill. So the question to CEOs and leaders are, what do you do at the highest level that nobody else can do? And that needs to be where you're pouring your time, your energy. Like, we can all do emails, but are emails really going to move the needle for you? No, like you don't have to you don't have to waste time on that. That's what these distractions are. So understanding what you do at the highest level and then seeing what your distractions are. Like, let's say you look at, okay, what is keeping me from being the best leader I can possibly be? What are these distractions in my life? Okay, I have kids. Okay, there's a commute. Yeah, there's emails. Now you take these distractions and you recruit these distractions onto your team. It's like what the Bulls and Jordan did with Rodman. He was a distraction. They couldn't get by him when he played for the Pistons. They recruited him to his team. Kobe did it all the time. LeBron does it all the time. The smart ones recruit distractions to their team. Can you bring your son into the family business? Can you put in an email? I do this now. Every email, it'll be an auto response. Hey, I'm working on a great big project to help you find breakthroughs in your life. So like showing people that, hey, I'm up to something really big. I'll get back to you when I can, but don't expect their answer right away. So it's almost using this emails as a distraction for a positive gain for you. A commute. Can you listen to a podcast, a book, a sermon, something to grow your mind during this time? So there's always ways to use distractions as positivities. So that's kind of just the structure of it. And then the other part of the triple threat as we continue to go on bringing focus with flow is what I call the call-ups. And these are just like cues, snaps that can bring this moment of focus back up at any time. I talk about the highlight reel, and everybody talks about visualization, and super important. And I use it with my NBA players. I show them their clips. They'll watch it every morning before they step on the floor for practice, before they step on the floor for the game. But the sense that we have that is 3 times stronger than any other sense is the sense of smell. So I call it the highlight reel 2.0. I'll have my players figure out what smell they associated with that in the zone moment of their life. What smell was that? So when they smell that smell, and we'll try to get it, like whether it's leather from a basketball, then I'll have leather from basketball, sweat, the
hardwood court. Like, I don't know.
Exactly. So you recreate that, and that smell will trigger you back into that moment of, okay, here I was at my best. Put visualization, yes, but add that with sensory of smell. And that's when you get the highlight reel 2.0. So there's a few more call-ups that I have that I could go through. And then there's pull cords. So the last part is pull cords, meaning if your parachute can't open up, you need that pull cord. What's the last resort? And if you could say, like, you're going to have days that just suck. Like, you can't get into it. You cannot. I'll have days where I'm trying to write, Carey, and I'll write 2 words. I just can't get into it. But during those times, then you just turn it over to serving. Like, how can I get out of my own head? And how can I say, okay, Taylor, let's go out to dinner. Or if your kids like, hey, I'm going to take my kids to the zoo on Tuesday, write these IOUs that put you in this service mode. Because once you're living in the service mode, and I can tell you some stories on this, on how impactful understanding living in the service mode was for me.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
So that means, and the tool that I use for this is every time you enter a room, look at your hands. Your hands are tools that you have with you all the time. Say the word serve. So when you open a door, say the word serve. Now you're thinking about, okay, how can I serve these people in the room? Because far too often we think about, okay, the people in the room, I need to connect with him. I need to connect with him. What can I get out of him? And it just drives us nuts. But if you go in there thinking, I'm going to serve, not only does it free yourself up, but also when you continually give and serve without expecting anything in return, it just comes back to you tenfold. It always happens that way. So living in the service mode is getting out of your own mind and out of your own, the world, like all the planets revolve around the world of me, and how can you pour into others? And I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm really passionate about this. So I'll give you a quick story on this. When I was coaching, this is when I realized it like full on. When I was coaching with the Nets, we were playing down in Dallas against the Mavericks. And I love to be the first person on the floor, just kind of like the ambiance of it, just a quiet time to myself. It's just my time. And this time I wasn't the first person when I came out there. There was a guy on the other side of the court shooting hoops in these old shoes, raggedy jeans, missing a lot of shots. And I walked by him to go to my side of the court. And he looks at me, he's like, the older you get, the legs go. And being a shooting coach, I know that's not true. So I had to counteract. I couldn't let that slide. I was like, it's not all about the legs. It's how you generate the power and the momentum. And I could tell he was intrigued. And I didn't want to get into a 15-minute, 20-minute lesson with this complete stranger that I didn't know. But I also told myself 2 weeks prior on our road trip before that I was going to try to live in this service mode, meaning God's given me this gift to be able to teach people how to shoot, whether it's a player, whether it's anybody, whether it's somebody just randomly asked me a question. I'm going to take the time. I'm going to do what I call my Jesus pace, where he got so much done, but he was never in a hurry. I was going to take my time and I was going to pour into them. So I gave this guy some tips, some pointers, and he started making more shots, getting more range on his shot. And now the real NBA players had to come out and start warming up for the game. So we had to get off. And I just said, hey, look, if you want more drills, more than happy to email some over to you. And he's like, yeah, for sure. Pulls out his business card, hands it to me. I just slip it in my pocket and I'm on my way. So I get like 5 minutes before the game. And I'm sitting there behind the bench before the game. And I pull out this business card. And just so you know, like I live out in Los Angeles. My wife's an actress. But if we saw a famous actor, I would have no idea who it is. And at this time, Shark Tank was not the Shark Tank that everybody knows it is. So this guy wasn't as recognizable. Probably should have known who he was, but I didn't. It said Mark Cuban. So I just been helping Mark. Yeah, crazy, right? I just been helping Mark Cuban harness his inner power for something he was passionate about. And that's when I realized, whoa, if I hadn't lived in this service mode, I would have passed this guy by completely. Now, Mark, I can text him, I can email him, ask him business advice, and he's amazing. He's a great guy. But that's would have never happened if I didn't pour something into him, help him with something he wanted to improve upon.
Gosh, I've got stories like that too,
it's
where
crazy, right?
I was so tired at the end of the day and this guy hops into my car, that kind of thing. And I'm like, oh no, I'm on again. And I'm like, hey, what's your name? And I don't want to give it away in this case, but it was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I had that attitude. Okay, so you got a lot of people who do love basketball. I've never, I played in elementary school. I was terrible, blah, blah, blah. So I can't really sink a lot of baskets. But what are some keys to like shooting straight? How do you shoot better? What would you have told Mark Cuban that day?
Well, his thing was he needed to get more power on the shot, and he thought it was all about his legs. But in reality, if you try to jump higher on your shot, your gravity is going to bring you down. So people will say shoot at the top of your jump, but you're actually already getting brought down by gravity. So I just showed him how to shoot on the way up, something that all great shooters do. They don't jump high on their shot, but they shoot when their momentum is going up. So that was the main thing that I showed him. And then I'll just break it down into three basic fundamentals. If you give somebody more than three things, it's just going to overwhelm them and they're going to combust. But I gave him three things, and it's literally just
take notes, guys. Stop, pause the show right now. Take notes. Take notes. Here you go. All of you NBA wannabes, listen up. Here it comes.
Here's your quick lesson. And if you don't have as many bad habits, it's going to help you. It's going to be quicker to learn those. So I would tell the first thing is the base, and that's the main thing. That is your feet. That is your balance. This is your base, and you're just going to be comfortable, shoulder width apart, toes pointing to the hoop. So all you have to say is base. So I always have people say it out loud too. Okay. Base. You have your base. Okay. Then the next one is pocket. So pocket meaning you're shooting pocket, kind of by where your pocket would be. That's where you're going to hold the ball. And it goes into more detail of how to exactly hold the ball and have your fingers in the grooves, split in the air hole, guide hand on the side where all the grooves come together. Little details, but I would show them that. So you have base, you have pocket. Everything is always straight and in alignment, straight and in line. So you're shooting straight, you're finishing straight, and then you have the follow through. And there's nothing more important than the follow through. And it just seems like that is just a common theme for every sport that you play or
That's
everything
like
in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, golf. I find that in tennis
Baseball.
when I'm baseball for sure. And so those are the three main things. Focusing on the base, your balance, the pocket, that's your alignment, and the follow through, that's your finish.
A lot of parents going to be out in the driveway tonight trying to take on their teenager who just got better than them. It's like, I just got coach. I think I can beat you again. Yeah.
That's
and
it.
for those who may not know who Mark Cuban is, the reason he was there is he owns the team.
Yes.
Right? He owns the Mavericks.
Yes.
That's why he was there. Yep. Fascinating story. What a great reminder. Okay. So why a book?
Because that is the best way to reach the most people. And I actually learned this from a book that I was reading to a guy that you've had on your podcast, who's a friend with our mutual friend, Brad Lomenick, who I haven't met yet, but I would love to. Mark Batterson talks about that.
Oh, Mark.
Of how, yeah. I've read all his books, just consumed them. And he would say that, I can go out and speak all over the place, but if I write this book, it can have an impact on so many more people than just going to one-off. So that's why I wrote the book, and that's why I'm going to continue to write books once a year. It'll turn into every 6 months. Like my goal, my mission that I'm on, don't have a job, don't have a career. It's a mission, and it's to be a mixture basically of a John Maxwell meets a Tony Robbins with a faith-based element meets a Tim Grover, who was Jordan and Kobe's trainer. So put those guys together, and that's what I'm going to be down the road.
How did you develop that vision?
You know what? That's a great question. I think it's just through just knowing that is like, that's my true gift. My true gift is how can I encourage people, but how can I encourage people in a genuine way where they're actually tooled, not just rah-rah, not just pumping people up. Anybody can do that, be a hype man, but giving people, like I did with basketball, giving people skills, giving people tools. I love giving people actionable hows. I'm not smart enough to talk over anybody's head. I can't come at you like Simon Sinek and give you all these just beautiful words flowing together with the whys and everything. So I really love the hows. Like if I'm going to be taught something, great. I'm going to listen to a podcast, great. Like, okay, but now give me a way to do something. So I think it's just a culmination really of like, that's what my skill set has been. That's what I've loved doing. And the overall overarching picture is I love leading others to figure out what their calling is, but how to actually actualize their calling. And then it motivates them to go teach it to others. So it's basically the whole concept of lead leaders, then they go lead other leaders.
So yeah, you're making me think about it because a lot of the time, 34-year-olds are not writing books. Do you have a lot of friends who are writing books at your stage?
Oh, I thought you were saying that you have a lot of friends. Like, no friends.
Yeah, do you have a lot of friends? Yeah, you have a lot of friends. I want to talk to you about that. But do you have a lot of friends who are writing books?
People
your age.
Not at my age. And it's
kind of weird because I'm like, we've had a handful on this show, but like usually you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s when you're writing books.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe I'm just an old soul, Carey.
Pastors are a little bit different because they're creating content all the time, so they'll often do devotional books. But that's really interesting. I can see it as a coaching thing too, David, where you're coaching players for a decade. Now you're coaching on a wider spectrum. It's just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's funny. Yeah. I was gonna say, I was talking to my wife. We were talking about like our friends, and my friends most of them are in their 50s, like John Gordon, Ed Milet, like Brad Lomenick, guys that I talk to the most. There's not a whole lot of them that are actually my age, unless they're NBA players, and they're usually in their 20s. So
exactly. They're a little bit younger, right?
My age.
No, that's fascinating. Again, I'm just following the curiosity trail. Yeah. So one thing Brad Lomenick, mutual friend who introduced us, told me to ask you is, you're really good at connecting with people. And so Brad has drawn a distinction on this show and other places before between networking and connecting. He says networking, you're kind of using people like, oh, I gotta meet David so that I can meet, so-and-so or whatever. But he says connectors are different. Connectors are just really good at connecting with people. So from Brad Lomenick, how are you a connector? How do you make all these connections? Because you do seem to know a lot of people.
Yeah, and first off, Brad is the ultimate connector. So he's the best.
He is. He knows. If I don't know somebody, I'm like, Brad, you probably had dinner with him yesterday. Can you introduce us? Yeah.
Yeah. We'll just have conversations. He'll drop some first name, like I'm supposed to know exactly who it is. Then he'll tell me, oh, it's this person. They're like the biggest of big people. So he's totally the best at it. But he hit the nail on the head. Like a lot of people say networking, or you get this terminology from LinkedIn. I got a network. And that's a dirty term. Connecting is about building true, genuine relationships. And you actually just hit the nail on the head too when you said, I'm following my curiosity. Like I go into every conversation being curious. Everybody has a story. And I want to hear it. I want to know what makes them tick. And you do a great job of that. I can tell through asking these questions. But yeah, the power is in connecting for, yes, it makes you look good and putting people together, but it's just like, that's the only way that this world can improve. If great people, great minds are working together. If it's just one person, like one's way too small of a number, but if you put these amazing people together, like they can create so many just things that we couldn't create without it. So I've just really, I love relationships. I love learning people's story. That's why I love podcasting, because it's a selfish way for myself to learn from a bunch of people and get to know a bunch of people. But
I understand that.
Yeah. And there's an art to it too. It's knowing that, hey, you're going to put two people together and there's a connection. I've created a connection calculator in my next book, actually, is one of the tools that you're going to use, because you have to filter it through. Like if these people aren't like on the same type of mission, or they don't have any commonalities, or one person might be what their status might be way higher than the other person's, like you can't necessarily just throw everything together. So there's an art to connecting and figuring out, okay, if I'm going to connect John Gordon and Ed Milet together, which I did for them to make an amazing podcast and become super good friends, like there has to be a value add to both of them. It can't just be Ed, just take on this. Like maybe they'll do that because they're a friend once in a while, but you have to look at where's the value add for both of these people in this connection.
Chips. At a certain level, you're cashing in chips, right? And you have to be so careful of that. I had that this morning where someone said, hey, can you introduce me to X? I won't say why. And I'm like, you know what? Haven't talked to them in a few months. I don't know them really well. Let me reach out, see if they respond. And if it's natural, I'd be happy to do it. But yeah, you got to be careful with that stuff.
Totally.
Have you ever been intimidated by somebody you've been introduced to as a young leader yourself?
Yeah, you know what? I used to get really intimidated and nervous when I stepped into a room and meeting with people. But I think it came to a point, Carey, where I was just like, you know what? God is up there looking down at me and just he's cheering me on. He's like, David, you're doing a great job growing this business, growing this brand. But then he's just laughing. He's like, that's cute. No, David, that's cute. But that's not the biggest picture, the biggest purpose of it. So when I walk into rooms and meet these people with high status and should be intimidated by, I know that majority of people that would walk into that room will be. And these guys everybody's just a human. Everybody's a person. We all struggle from the same type of things. And when you can see somebody as this, then it takes a lot of you're not worried about it. Like I'm not going to go into like one of my super good friends is Eric Spolster now. We're just at lunch with him down in Miami. Like, I'm not just going to be like intimidated by Eric or taking a bunch of pictures with him or trying to use him in any way. And like, he wants a friend. I want a friend. Let's genuinely have a friendship. And that's all it comes down to. Everybody at the core, everybody's a human and we all have insecurities. So to look at these high status people as more than just a person, they don't even want that.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of them don't enjoy the notoriety that comes along with what they're doing or what they're known for. So the book is called Pivot and Go. You've done a lot of pivoting in your life, right? Multiple times. I've seen this. It's a little bit of a book trend, which I think is actually cool. But it's like a 28-day plan. Is that it? 28 days?
Yeah. So 28 days to 29 is the day you get to choose to make it a lifestyle.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So what's in it? If someone picks up the book, what are you hoping will happen in their lives?
Yes. So a pivot is a basketball term when you can't see the hoop, defenders are all over you, and you take this just small turn, not a big drastic turn, because big drastic change is very daunting. It's very tough for people to do, but small, slight perspective shifts. If I'm looking at something from one direction and just slightly pivot it can open up an entire horizon. So being able to look at different situations that you look at it from a slightly different perspective, and looking at what, like, for example, like, what does success mean? Most people look at it as you're going to make a lot of money and you have all this notoriety, Instagram followers, but really, is that success? Do you want to be Steve Jobs on your deathbed and miserable, one of the richest people there was? No. What is success to you? What is failure? We talked about failure. You can use that as a positive in both ways. What is true joy? What is true passion? What is true confidence? And it's really just a outside the box, a little bit different perspective look on struggles that we might go through, on things that get us stuck. So essentially, this is written for people who have felt stuck in their life. We've all felt it to some extent, especially over 2020, and now feeling stuck. Even in this year, a lot of us are.
Yeah.
But and then it's an actionable tool of how to get unstuck, and that's the go part. So how do you pivot, and then how do you go?
Can we drill down a little bit on confidence before we wrap up? Because that's something a lot of leaders struggle with. I think underneath a lot of leaders is insecurity. How do you define confidence, David?
Man, we could go all day on this too. I love this. I have a 7 steps to unshakable confidence that I teach to leaders, that I teach to players, and we can go super in depth. Maybe we'll do another one. We'll go in depth on that. But
give us the overview.
Yes. So the main part of confidence at the core. So confidence is looked at like, okay, this is your resume. These are your accomplishments. This is. And you can gain confidence from that, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg of what true confidence is about. True confidence is about true self-awareness, knowing that you stand for so much more than what any result, what any stat on a basketball sheet can say. And I learned this in the story I tell is a really good friend of mine, Jeremy Lin, went through this time in 2012, 2013 called Linsanity. And he basically came out of obscurity and he took over the NBA. He was going for game winners, 30 points a night, like literally out of obscurity. The guy was about to be
I even know that name. Yeah, he must be quite famous. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very famous. And if you look it up, you'll see. And he was at the top of the top. He was the number one trending thing in the world for weeks. Like he had all the press, all the media, everything on him. And if he was being honest with you, he'd tell you he would never want to go through that time again, because instead of living in the appreciation for what he had done, he was living in the what ifs. What if I can't keep this up? What will people think of me? What if I can't keep this pace going? And it drove him nuts. And that drives us nuts. Like that is the results. Like we have to keep outperforming, and it'll drive you insane. But one of the biggest accomplishments I've seen him have in his career, and me helping guide him to do is find his true self-awareness, and that he stands for his Taiwanese people. He stands for his faith in Jesus. He even stands for thinking he's a great gourmet chef in the kitchen. So much more than just basketball and just what the identity is. So when you figure out your self-awareness of who you truly are, and then with that confidence, like there's other tools to it. Like we talked about the call-ups. So we talked about confidence through serving, confidence through visualization, confidence through comparison. Somebody's done it before at a high level that you want to do it at. Instead of comparing yourself to them and feeling bad about it that you're not there, just follow their steps. Kobe Bryant did it to Michael Jordan. I did it to Chip England. Like that's encouraging that somebody's been there before. So there's more steps that go into it, but at the core, confidence is about true self-awareness.
I love that. We say to our team all the time when we don't know how to solve something, it's like, look, somewhere on earth today, someone has figured this out. Let's be those people. Let's Google this to death. Yeah. Let's call a friend. Let's figure it out, because somebody is going to get this breakthrough. We might as well try to figure it out, right? Somebody has gone before. Very rarely, when you think you're doing a new thing, are you really doing a new thing? I mean, this whole show has been way bigger than I ever thought it would be, but nobody was doing this in the church space. And I just sat down about 6.5 years ago and said, I'd like to bring these conversations to life. Long form works in the business space. I think I'll try it. And here we are, all these years later, right? But there's always people who've done it before, which is awesome. Okay, what would you say to leaders? Because I loved your title, Pivot and Go. I have a course called the 30-Day Pivot. One thing we hear all the time on my channels is, I'm sick of pivoting. Like, we pivoted so much, I'm too tired. What would you say to the exhausted, defeated leader who would say, love you, David, thanks, nice interview, I'm too tired to pivot? What would you say to them?
I know, totally. We're feeling that burnout. That burnout is real. I would say, you know what I'd say? I would say laugh at yourself. I would say find something that you suck at, that you're bad at, and just do it and laugh at yourself and know that it is okay to laugh at yourself. Because we as leaders, high performers, wanting to take it to the next level, we put so much pressure on ourselves, whether it's pressure from outside, whether it's pressure from our boss, whether it's pressure from ourselves. And that builds up and it just wears us down. So laugh at yourself. Do something. I took a YouTube hip hop dance class with my wife a couple weeks ago. I am horrible. Like, I can't make my feet and my arms move together at all. But instead of getting so frustrated that I couldn't figure something out, just laugh at myself. NBA players, I've done it with Domantas Sabonis. Like, he just took himself so seriously. And if he missed a shot, he just drove himself nuts and wanted to kick the ball across the court. Once he realized, you know what? I can just laugh at myself. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to have a bad week. It's okay to have a bad month, but there's no straight line to success. It's always like the stock market's going up and down, and down and curving, but it's always trending up. So just take a step back, do something you're bad at, have fun with it, and laugh at yourself.
That's good advice. That's good advice. Okay, people want to find you. What social channels are you active on? And then where can they find the book?
Yes, so social media, David Nurse NBA, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those. The book is anywhere books are sold, Amazon, my website, davidnurse.com. I do a coaching program that I call Be the Breakthrough, where I teach people how to find what their gift is, what their passion is, mix it with their purpose. Passion plus purpose equals mission. And so we go through 90 days and it's really fun, man. It's really fun seeing people have breakthroughs in their life. And my latest thing I've been doing, which is coming out in October, is my next book, which we'll tease out there a little bit, but it all has to do with helping people turn little happy accidents into regularly occurring breakthroughs. Boom, that's my teaser.
That's really cool. David, thanks so much for being with us today. Really appreciate you, man. It's good to hang out.
Carey, you're awesome, man. Thank you for all you do, brother.
Well, I hope today's episode was helpful to you. You can always get more by subscribing to my channel. I also have a lot more content over at CareyNieuwhof.com for leaders in business and leaders in churches. And you can get transcripts of this episode there and so much more, plus some other stuff I do for leaders. So head on over there to discover more at CareyNieuwhof.com. And in the meantime, I really hope our time together today has helped you lead like never before.